Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's Robert Phoenix here, and just trying to get all the systems back online. And boy, oh boy, has it been a real fun experience. Actually, the answer to that is not quite. There's Judy. Hey, what's happening, Judy? And Jennifer Rubin. Good to see you. Nice to be here. Welcome to the show that never ends. We got Jennifer Fitzgerald and Mojo Mama and Ian and Vivi and Sharon Q. What's happening? Sorry, again, I apologize for the lateness. I'm just still trying to get a lot of these systems up and running. And much of it has to do with my computer and the internet at this point. But we are endeavoring here. We are in endeavor mode to get this thing up and running. And by Sunday night, we'll have everything linked up, locked in, all that goodness. Let me there we go. I'm back in Zoom land. Here I am, the blue collar astrologer. This is all about being the garage band. This is the garage band of astrological insights in the exploration of truth and high strange. I've got the garage band look going today. So yeah, I think it's okay. I mean, I'm just looking at the latency with the computer and everything. But I think we'll be all right. I'm not sure about the behind the head the cat backward look though. Hold on a second. I had a vanity moment there. There we go. I don't think men over 50 should wear their caps backwards. That's my sense. Vanity moment, kick it in. How is everybody? We're getting there. Darn it, we're getting there. We are getting there. I have something to say to everybody out there in the YouTube audience, Chatlandia, streaming world. If you don't vote for Donald Trump, you ain't white, okay? You ain't white. Can you believe this shit? Can you believe Joe Biden? If you vote for Donald Trump, you ain't black. And you know what's really interesting is I've been on Twitter and I've been reading some of the responses from the so-called black community. They don't have a problem with it. They really don't have a problem with it. You know, so this sounds like it's a bad move on Biden's part. I mean, it'll chase the centrists away, but it certainly is working on creating more polarization, which is obviously tactical. It's like, I'll show you, motherfuckers. I'm going to vote for this guy anyway. See, I don't care. I just don't want Trump in there. That's what I'm reading on Twitter. So what is the line? What would Biden have to say? Now, there's already a woman who said that like he could boil a baby and eat it, and she still vote for him. What did I say about 3 weeks ago? I said that Biden could be drooling, whip out his weenie, and start to play with himself, and people would still vote for him. Okay, I mean this is where it is. This is where it's at. So I asked this one guy, I suppose he's so-called black African American. Where do you draw the line? Like, where do you draw the line? You know, what it would be unacceptable? What would Biden say or do that would be unacceptable? I mean, think about the animosity and the hatred and the division and the derision and the strife that has been invocated here. What would Biden have to do to just completely turn somebody off for voting for him? I know what he'd have to do. He would have to have something nice to say about Donald Trump. If he has something nice to say about Donald Trump, it'd be game over. They wouldn't vote for him. So as long as he keeps throwing up invective, he'll just keep winning supporters. I mean, what does that say about our system? It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. It's pretty shot. It's pretty broken. But it's not. I expected this to kind of blow up. They took a risk. They said, "Go for it. Let's polarize some more people. Let's really bring in the so-called Black and African American vote." It's almost guaranteed now that either Stacey Abrams or Kamala Harris will be the candidate to be vice president. Probably Stacey Abrams. My money's on Stacey Abrams. Because then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, look, see, this is a message from God. She didn't win the governor's race because God had a greater plan for her. God had a greater plan for me. I didn't understand it at the time when all the voter suppression was taking place in my home state of Georgia, where I believe that I am the rightful governor and that I was passed over. But God had a greater plan and a greater mission. And that greater plan and greater mission is to stand side by side with your future president, Joe Biden, so we can take our message and fight to another level. I guarantee you're going to hear that message. You don't have to be psychic to figure that one out. Am I right? That's a given. That's a given. The hand of God has moved me into a position of destiny. Right. And what God are we talking about? How is everybody today? Welcome. It's the Friday FARcast. And as always, there's a lot going on. I'm going to get into Tom Hanks today. Got a lot of Hanksy Panksy, some interesting stuff. And I'm going to try, and not everything. Tom Hanks has done a lot of movies. He's had his hands, he's had his fingers in a lot of different pies, Tom Hanks. And I'm gonna do maybe a part 1, a part 2, maybe even a part 3, because there's so much there. There's so much happening. And he's got a movie that's coming out in October called BIOS, which is quite bizarre. He plays the last man on Earth, and he creates an AI to look over his dog. Right. So Tom Hanks, the last man on Earth, that's it. His dog is going to outlive him. And he's created an AI protector to protect the dog from who knows what. I don't know. Anyway, that comes out in October. BIOS. That's the name of the movie. So now he's got his fingers in the AI world. We're going to go down the Hanks rabbit hole. Not everything, but enough. Enough to give you an idea that there has been a plan for Tom Hanks all along. Now, I'm going to, and again, now, I'm not Miles Mathis. I could go into the genealogy stuff. It takes a lot of time. You got to have sort of the right software, the right subscription to the right, services. But I would bet that Hanks is connected to the Merovingian bloodline. That's without even going into his genealogy, that's my thesis, is that he's connected to the Merovingian bloodline, and that this has been one of the things that's propelled him forward in his cinematic career. And I'm going to show you certain things along the way that actually illustrate this. And that it's amazing some of the stuff that you're going to see with Hanks. And I'm going to cover Bosom Buddies and some of the early films, all the way up through mostly Cloud Atlas and a little bit beyond. So we're going to get into the Hanks rabbit hole. I'm going to play his commencement speech for Wright University. So this is an interesting commencement speech, because Wright University is in Dayton, and it's near Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And Wright-Patterson Air Force Base supposedly was where they relocated Area 51. And this was news back in like the late 90s, right? Like whatever really top secret, black budget stuff that they were working on with maybe interdimensionals or off-worlders or whatever, got relocated to Wright-Patterson. So this is an interesting like university. And Wright-Patterson actually has a program. This is interesting. Now they've got a program there called Gnosis. I'm going to read this to you. It's really a trip. My hooked. Oh, we got the wrong thing. All right, hold on. This is really a trip. I'm going to go back into Chatlandia in a second and say hi again. We're gonna get into our little prayer and invocation here in a second. But I want to show you this this program at Wright State. Now remember, this is the place that Tom Hanks did the commencement for. Well, of course, they have ROTC, but check this out. The Ohio Center of Excellence in Knowledge-Enabled Computing, NOASIS. NOASIS Center was founded in 2007. In 2009, Ohio Ed Department, Higher Education, established more than 50 centers of excellence representing key industrial areas with potential future growth. NOASIS at Wright State University was one of the selections in the area of biohealth innovations. Let me read that and say that again. Biohealth innovations. Research at the center focuses on multidisciplinary studies such as Web 3.0, semantic web, semantic sensor web, network science, social data analysis, machine learning, data mining, bioinformatics, natural language processing, visualization, cloud computing, high performance computing. In recent years, NOASIS has had near 80 to 100 researchers, including 15 faculty, and over 60 funded graduate, primarily PhD students. NOASIS researchers have contributions in the areas to computer science, with focus on topics in World Wide Web, including semantic web, social data analysis, sensor web, and linked open data. Furthermore, they have been part of developing technical specifications and guidelines for W3C until 2013. So NOASIS is apparently the digital version of Gnosis. So this is Wright University or Wright State. This is the commencement. This is where Tom Hanks did his telecommensement speech. Wright State. Very interesting program. Also in the backyard of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which again seems to be where a lot of the research and black budget projects of Area 51 were relocated. That's just for starters. Let me get into Chatlandia. Let me say hi to you guys. See how you're doing. And again, I apologize for the lateness, but we're getting things together here. It's going to happen. It's happening. Okay, here we go. What do we got here? We got see Sharon Q and Catherine Kingsville. There's Charles. What's going on? Ever checked out 3D audio and 8D audio? No, but I probably should. Let's see. We got Mr. Spangler in the audience. Christine. There we go. There's my man Steve Mercer. And let's see, 10 Dragon. Now you're looking ready to go fishing or chainsaw. Biden is gone. I don't know. That was kind of an interesting move from Biden. Don and Maury in the house, Receipt City. Let's just face it, Biden is not going to be president. Astrologically, he shouldn't be. He shouldn't be. He is a placeholder, by the way. You mean Biden's not drooling yet? At least not on screen. Biden is doing great things for Trump, saying huge, stupid things to get votes. Biden should have ran in 2016. I don't think they would have let him. That was Hillary's. They were giving the ball to Hillary. Hey, it's BB. What's happening, BB? What's going on? Nice to see you. There's Emily Moyer. The Techno Brat is in the house. Steve and Chris just signing in now. Nice to see you guys. Deborah Lynn, FUP 77 from North Idaho. Who else do we have here? DJ MC in the house. Mary Grether. Who else? Patty Hill, good morning. And I think that gets us up to speed. Robbie Chopra from Atlanta. What's going on, Rob? I've been hearing there's Kathy Steen. Hi, Kathy. Nice to see you. And Coach K. What's happening, Coach K? Marie Olmstead and Frank Bry and Paula. Oh, my God. You're all here. Awesome. Very awesome. Rob is on the road. Rob is taking the networking roadshow to the ATL. Rob, I hope you're having a good time down there and experiencing some good Southern hospitality. You're in the right state, literally and figuratively. All right, let's do a little invocation magic here. Let's do that. Dear blessed and holy Father, Mother God of the great central sun, which is the light of Sananda Yeshua Emmanuel, we ask that only the highest and best information come through this stream, this moment, this time, and that any karmic residue that we all share with one another or are attached to any one of us is cleansed, purified, clarified, and removed so we can experience this stream in its sacred totality, and that we are free to enter back into our lives as sovereign entities and beings. So be it. Thank you very much. All right, let's get right into the Hanks thing. Let's go to it. If you haven't seen it now, I want to play you Tom Hanks's. All right, before I do this, there is some question as to whether or not Tom Hanks is still alive. Some people think he's dead. It's very mysterious. We've entered into kind of a Dan Brown novel now with Tom Hanks, haven't we? Oh, gee. Who played Robert Langdon? Tom Hanks. He came off the plane. Where was that plane? Who were the men waiting for him? What was in the satchel? What was he doing in Australia? Why did his wife, Rita Wilson, isn't it interesting that his wife's name is Rita Wilson, and he named the volleyball Wilson because Wilson obviously made the volleyball? It's kind of interesting. A little interesting thought. Wilson's an interesting name too, right? It's Will, right? Will, which is force, and son, right? S-O-N, the son, the life force, the son of man, or the son of God. Wilson, the son of the will. Interesting. Anyway, she was putting her phone number out there. And then we have the mystery known as Chet Hanks, Mr. All-Seeing Eye, Illuminati tattoo guy. And then there's his brother, Jim Hanks, who looks a hell of a lot like him and sounds a lot like him. You know, now we're into like Gemini territory there. By the way, Tom Hanks is a Cancer born July 9th, which, if I'm not mistaken, is that, I think that's Freeman's birthday, July 9th. If I'm not mistaken. Freeman and Tom Hanks share the same birthday. Somebody's trying to get a hold of me. Hold on one second. I might have to get this. Hold on. Sorry about that. I thought it was an important call. I guess I'll get it later. Anyway, so there's this really strange and shrouded mystery that's happening around Tom Hanks right now. And even his Saturday Night Live performance feels like it could have been hologrammatic or deep faked. There's a lot of strange stuff happening with Tom Hanks. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know exactly what's going on with Tom Hanks, because I don't. But what I will show you is how his films have played very significant roles in shaping our consciousness. And there's also foreshadowing in some films, absolutely predictive programming, right? So I'm going to definitely illustrate that to show you that he's a player. And I think he's a fairly significant player in a lot of ways. And again, I have no sort of basis in reality for any sort of, how do I say this? Legacy proof or genealogical proof. But I'm betting somewhere in his bloodline that he's got this Merovingian connection. And I'll try to establish that a little bit as we go further into today's show. So remember, he's a Cancer, July 9th, which means that his sun is conjunct the U.S. sun, which is also conjunct its pole star, also known as Sirius, which is esoterically kind of interesting in and of itself. All right, so why don't we jump in? Let's take a look at the commencement speech. It's about 5 minutes long. If you haven't seen it, it's very odd. And if you have seen it, you know what I'm talking about. You get to see it again, and then we'll break it down after we witness this thing. So let's go into screen share. All right, so here he is, the chosen one. Interesting. And away we go.
I'm here to say congratulations. Congratulations to you chosen ones. And I am calling you the chosen ones because you have been chosen in many ways. First, by the temperament and discipline you've lived by the creative fires that are inside of you and the instinctive lunges of your desires. There is something about you, all of you, in your upbringing and your background and your conscious memories and your ongoing mysteries, something that has driven you to complete your courses and achieve your selected challenges and cross the Rubicon of your time there, your studies at Wright State. You succeeded because of...
Hello? Hello? No, it's not right. What the hell happened there? That was not supposed to happen. That was not supposed to happen. Hold on. Let me go back. Let me go back. Find out what happened. Did we get shut down here? Pardon me. I don't know why that took place. Let's try it again. All right. Let's try this. All right, here we go. Una mas. Again, my apologies.
I'm here to say congratulations. Congratulations to you chosen ones. And I am calling you the chosen ones because you have been chosen in many ways. First, by the temperament and discipline you've lived by the creative fires that are inside of you and the instinctive lunges of your desires. There is something about you, all of you, in your upbringing and your background and your conscious memories and your ongoing... Congratulations. Way to go.
Oh, that was the short one. That was the short one. No wonder it ended. Let me see. Let me try to find this again. Tom Hanks, chosen. You are the chosen one. We got to find the long one. That was the abridged one. Okay, we got to find the long one. Give me one moment here. One moment. All right, this is 5 minutes and 9 seconds. So this thing should be the whole thing, right? Let's try it again. Here we go. One more time. Once more with feeling.
I'm here to say congratulations. Congratulations to you chosen ones. And I am calling you the chosen ones because you have been chosen in many ways. First, by the temperament and discipline you've lived by the creative fires that are inside of you and the instinctive lunges of your desires. There is something about you, all of you, in your upbringing and your background and your conscious memories and your ongoing mysteries, something that has driven you to complete your courses and achieve your selected challenges and cross the Rubicon of your time there, your studies at Wright State. You succeeded because of the aid and the love of others that are in your lives, without a doubt. But you have succeeded mostly because you and you alone chose to do so. You are the chosen ones. You are the chosen ones because of a fate unimagined when you began your Wright State adventures. You started in the olden times in the world back before the great pandemic of 2020. You will talk of those earlier years in your lives just that way. Well, that was back before the COVID-19. That was before the great pandemic. Part of your lives will forever be identified as before. In the same way other generations tell time like, well, that was before the war, or that was before the internet, or that was before Beyonce. The word before is going to carry great weight with you. Today you mark your graduation, which has come during the restructuring of time and of science, of our own national will, and of a worldwide commonwealth. You have finished Wright State during, well, the great reset, the great reboot. You've gone from student to graduate. When more has been expected of you than to just be an American, you have had to be responsible Americans. You've had to be good Americans. Good Americans who made the sacrifices that have saved lives. Now, you'll reference these past weeks, as for however many weeks there are yet to come, as during the pandemic, during the COVID-19, during the lockdown, the quarantine, during the shelter in place. Sometime, if we all remain good Americans, you will continue on into the after, as in that was after the virus was tamed, after we were safe to go out again, after we took up our probable lives once more. But your after is not going to look the same as your during or as your before. You will have seen the movie and you will know how it ends. You will be enlightened in ways your degree from Wright State never held in promise. You will have made it through the time of great sacrifice and great need, and no one will be more fresh to the task of restarting our measure of normalcy than you chosen ones. You have not returned to the starting line like all of us generations before you. You're just approaching it now for the first time. You've just arrived. You are chosen in that way to enter into the competition of life just when so many have had to recover and refresh and restart and reawaken, and to retake up the hard work and the unshirkable responsibilities of making the world not only our own, but of your own. Every class of every year moves up into the rotation and proves their value by living their values. But this class, your class, isn't just doing work that has to be done. You're joining in the work that has to be done. You chosen ones are going to form the new structures and define the new realities and make the new world, the world after all that we have been through and after your time here in the final years, the final weeks at Wright State. Now, the future is always uncertain, but we who celebrate what you have done, who celebrate all of your achievements, we are certain of one thing on this day. You will not let us down. Thank you. Congratulations. Way to go.
Now, how bizarre is that? I mean, on some level, it's not bizarre. I understand exactly what he's doing, right? Because he's been a player from the start with this so-called coronavirus, right? Like he was one of the first so-called casualties of the coronavirus, and then being quarantined in Australia, theoretically, with his wife, Rita Wilson. And then there's a whole weird scene where some kid is bullied and Tom Hanks, because the kid's name is Corona. And then Tom Hanks has a Corona typewriter and he sends the kid the typewriter. I mean, so Tom Hanks has been in a lot of ways, like he moved from the screen and being this, how do I say this symbolic character in a number of different movies to actually moving forward into the theater of this theoretical pandemic, right? So he's been here pretty much from start to finish, although it's not quite finished yet. And what he's essentially doing along the way is he's been selling this, right? He's been selling this thing. And one of the films that he just finished not long ago was the Mr. Rogers movie. And of course, as Mr. Rogers, he's incredibly believable. He's really nice. And you know, we had that kind of drone event in New Jersey where the drone was asking people to, you know, socially distance and in this very nice way, right? It was like a very Brave New World sort of way. If you ever read Brave New World, if you've read it, you'll know that the voices that tell people what to do, they're not harsh. They're very nice. You know, please gently move away from one another, like, because there's consequences if you don't, right? It's kind of the Mr. Rogers level of enforcement for the Brave New World. And Tom Hanks is just coming off of that Mr. Rogers role and experience. But there's some things in there that are interesting. And he's talking about time in a way that is a little ominous. If you go back and listen, he's telling you, we're not sure how many weeks or years we have. Now, whether that's true or not is to be determined, because we're going to live through this thing. And we've got some very intense astrological energies ahead of us during the summer. Very intense stuff. Okay. So, and we've got an eclipse coming up as well, which we'll talk about on Sunday night. So he's like kind of laying this thing out. And he's also using a form of hyperbole so that he could sell it even more. So whether or not he really knows how much time we really do have left or what's coming, or whether it's another kind of theatrical presentation and kind of hyper dramatization, well, it'll be determined, right? It'll be determined. But this is what he's saying. He's like framing that in this context of a state of finality. Like the world is over. Like Tom Hanks is basically saying the world that we're in is over. And I would agree with that to a large extent. I would agree with that. But I don't see the new world or the new vision of the world the same way that he does. I see it in a different way. I see a different timeline. Okay. He's got one timeline. I've got a different timeline. He's got his sort of commandments that he's been tasked to share with the students of Wright State and the rest of the world. And he talks about a reset. This is really important because what have we been talking about for the last, 6 months, really? You know, we go back to, we've been talking about a reset for a while, but once Tartaria really entered into the picture in my world, in my work, the idea of a reset took on a completely different resonance and a completely different meaning. And I do believe that Hanks is talking about a reset in that exact way. He's basically saying that you're going to be the ones. You've been chosen, not specifically because they have any great skills, gifts, or talents, but because of the time and because of the timing, that this would be the generation that would inhabit the new world, that they would become the inheritors. Because the world that Tom Hanks was a part of, the world that I've been a part of, the world that you've been a part of, that world is over. Now, if that's the case, then there would be theoretically next phases and next stages to begin to eradicate that world even more. And that's been going on for a while now. The removal of websites, the removal of statues, historical figures that are no longer allowed to talk about. I mean, so the reset isn't just something that's just happened last week or last month or in March on 3/11. It's been going on for a while now. But this is what I think he's inferring. Now, if you bring the fourth turning into this, he's also talking about that this generation that's graduating from Wright State and all these other colleges that are theoretically graduating, although nobody's having any graduation ceremonies, that they would fall into this phase of the fourth turning where they would be the new spring, right? That they would be sort of the heroes of the next age, that they would be in some ways similar to the post-World War II generation, because that's when the last of the first turnings occurred. It was right after World War II. And of course, that's the age of the hero. And what has this whole thing with Corona been? It's been some kind of a weird war, a very weird war. But what's been the war? What has it been a war on? Feels like it's been a war on elderly people. It feels like elderly people have been targeted during this whole coronavirus thing. I've been following the stuff with what's happening in New York State and the elder care. I mean, look, whatever these people had in the hospitals in New York, and I'm not convinced it was whatever this coronavirus thing they say it is, but whatever those people had in New York in those hospitals, and they moved them, right? They moved them into these nursing homes and the elder care centers, and the numbers are off the charts for people dying in these places. And it's so insidious, right? There was this woman on Tucker Carlson last night, and her husband's father and mother both died in this nursing home, right? And again, it's supposedly COVID-19. And they actually took the mother out of the nursing home and moved her to a hospital so that she could die in the hospital and that the nursing home would not have the statistic. So if you look at most of the people that have suffered from this so-called virus, it's been the elderly. So if there's been a war, it's been a war in the elderly. This is, I mean, it's almost like they've been going through these death panels in these elder care centers. And I don't believe that that's a coincidence, by the way. And who gets the most flu shots? It's the elderly. The elderly are always freaked out about getting sick. My mother gets a flu shot every year. And what happens? She gets sick. I can always tell her, go get that flu shot. Have you ever noticed you get sick after you get the flu shot? Yeah, I know. Well, why do you get the flu shot? Why do you get it? Well, because Ben Casey tells her to get the flu shot. So this is, I think, what Tom Hanks is talking about. He's talking about that this generation, they're setting it up, right? They're setting this thing up. And if you think that they're done with, revamping whatever, kind of societal norm or whatever world we've been living, you think they're done? You think that just because, Carl Mankey has refused to close his barbershop, that they're done? No, they're not done. They're just getting started, okay? They're just getting started. Just because we can go back out into the world and begin to, resume some of our lives in places like Texas here, they're not done. They got more things. They've got a plan in mind. They've got Agenda 21 in mind. They're not, if the virus thing falls apart, they will bring out virus 2. If that falls apart, maybe they'll fire up the earthquake machines. We'll have massive earth changes. If that doesn't work, they've got the alien card. Whatever it takes, man. They're here to flip the freaking script, okay? That's what they're here to do. And this is the world we're living in now, which is interesting because there's this kind of tug of war for reality, right? There's this tug of war for timelines. And just like Steve Crimmy brought up, the Greek idea of not the cross or the crossroads, but the Y. And we're at the Y. And of course, the true node is just kind of the Gemini. So it makes total sense that we'd be in the Y mode. So this is this is one world. That's their world, right? That's their world. That's one world. And then here's the other world. Which one do you want? You want that world? Or you want that world? I'll take that world. All right. Let's get into a little more Hanks. I just wanted to show that to you guys to set the stage, because really what he's saying, he's revealing that we are in the time of the reset, and that this generation has been chosen to be the inheritors of the new time. Okay. All right. Here we go. So in order to understand Tom Hanks, we have to go back to the beginning. Back to the beginning. Oh, come on. He was just up here. Let's go. So Hanks really jumps onto our screen in a series that premiered in 1980 called Bosom Buddies. This is where he is initiated. Then this goes right into Dave Chappelle land, where they're told that you got to cross dress. Oh, that's okay. Milton Berle cross dressed. He was quite successful. Don't worry about it. He cross dressed. But this is an initiation, right? Tom Hanks is being initiated, and he's taking on a transvestite identity. Now, it comes out of course, the Marilyn Monroe movie. What is that? Some Like It Hot, or Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. What's the one where Tony Curtis dresses up like a woman and stuff? I forget which one it is. But they've got it's part of this Hollywood tradition. You go back to Shakespeare and actors. They weren't actors and actresses. Like men dressed up as women in the Shakespearean theater and Shakespearean plays. I mean, you could make a case for this, right? This is just old theater, but it takes on a different connotation in the modern era. And Hanks almost looks like he's in a glam hair band in LA around 1980, right? He looks like he's auditioning for Rat or the LA Vipers or some shit like that. Now, Peter Scolari is his bosom buddy here. And he can't, Peter Scolari's career does not go the same way as Tom Hanks's career goes, obviously. Scolari's kind of an afterthought after this series. But this is what propels Tom Hanks into our awareness and our consciousness. This is an initiation. Because, I mean, they could have had any other kind of script or pilot or sitcom idea for Hanks. Could have easily been done. They could have introduced him as, in fact, he was on Taxi, one episode, but they easily could have introduced him as a member of the cast of Taxi. There are any number. He could have been on Designing Women. You know what I mean? There could have been any number of vehicles. But Bosom Buddies was the show that Hanks was going to be cast. And of course, he is wearing pink. Peter Scolari wears blue. And we have, he kind of looks like a cross between Freddie Mercury and, I don't know, Beethoven there. He makes a pretty good trance on some level. But this is where he gets to start. This is the initiation moment, right? Bosom Buddies. Tom, you passed the initiation. Well done. You may proceed to the next stop in your career. And what is really the next stop in his career? It's this movie. Big. So in Big, this is Tom Hanks, who is a young guy hanging out at a Coney Island or one of the amusement parks in the East Coast. And he has this moment with Zoltar, right? And Zoltar grants him his wish. And he basically wants to be big, right? We've all had that kind of moment in time. Oh, gee, I wish I was 21 or 20 or whatever it was. I used to say to my father, don't worry, you'll grow up fast enough. So, of course, this is really the kind of the major inception of Hanks's career. Now, there's some interesting implications here with Big. Let me throw up some of the big movie posters, and I'll show you some hidden in plain sight stuff. So here's one poster, and there's Hanks and Elizabeth Perkins. And then what is he doing here? He's got the Eye of Horus. So if you go back and you look at any number of older movies, because we've just been theoretically like trained or become aware of the fact that they're always flashing symbols, signs, and signifiers. That's been going on for a while. Okay. Nothing new under the sun. And what do we have here? We have Tom Hanks, a little Eye of Horus action. You say, it's just the pose. It just happens to be the pose. Okay, perhaps. Perhaps. Have you ever had a really big secret? Here we go again. Little Eye of Horus action, right? Gee, I wonder what the really big secret is here. What is the really big secret? What is the big, wonderful new comedy? It's a wonderful new comedy. Tom Hanks, the hooded one, with the Eye of Horus. So I think Big is, first of all, there were a number of comedies that were, it was weird. It was like Hollywood was going through this phase where they're doing a lot of switched identity stuff. Older guys and younger bodies, younger guys. So a lot of this was going on in Hollywood right around the time of Big. But I feel like Big is actually it's actually a metaphor for immortality. And as we've gotten to kind of know and understand how shall we say, the potentially unseemly private life of Tom Hanks, and some of the vital fluids and life forces that seem to be shared amongst a certain community, that it gives people or endows people with what? A sense of immortality or staying young forever, right? To be an adult, to have an adult body, but the spirit of youth. Okay, so is Big a potential precursor for some of the, how shall we say, hormonal interchange that Tom Hanks and or hormonal interchange that Tom Hanks and other people in that particular community partake in. Here we have Robert Loggia, and they're doing, of course, this little dance on the piano. We have duality again, the black keys and the white keys, right? And then it's an FAO Schwartz, the famous toy store, which is probably not there anymore. But this is the film that really launches Hanks in a big way. And again, it has to do with this kind of phase in Hollywood where there's a lot of switched identity stuff going on. None of them were quite as successful as Big. I think Freaky Friday was another one of these movies, but there's something in that film that has to do with being young forever or having the capacity of being an adult or having an adult body, but you have the spirits and the energy and the stamina of a youth, right? And isn't this what a group of select people are seeking? And this is the film that completely launches Hanks into our consciousness. And have you ever had a secret, a really big secret? Gee, I wonder what that big secret might be. Just thinking out loud. So after that, Hanks embarks on a number of movies, some of which are more successful than others, some of which are kind of throwaway films. Joe versus the Volcano. You guys may remember that. You may not remember that. It is not memorable. It is not a memorable movie. There's Suburbs. He does a couple of the movie with Dan Aykroyd, Dragnet. Okay, it's kind of a comedic takeoff. He does a not a bad movie with Sally Field called Punchline about stand-up comedians. Not a bad film, but he's kind of after Big. He's kind of like plateauing, in these movies that are sort of kind of, high B, low A. They're throwing darts and hoping to hit something. But he begins to take off in Sleepless in Seattle. Right. So there's a number of films at the end of the 90s where Hanks's career, before that, I want to go to another film. In one that I think is actually quite important in the Hanks phenomenon here, or the Hanks vector, as we say. So this is what lands Hanks in the realm of a serious actor. It's Philadelphia. And of course, there's a significant amount of messaging in Philadelphia. First of all, he's gay, right? Second of all, he's got AIDS, HIV, which is a whole other component to this. Like, this is one of those movies that's going to sell AIDS and HIV to the American public. This is the cinematic sell for people like Fauci and Robert Gallo. Okay. Now, not only is he gay, has HIV and AIDS, but he's heroic. He's portrayed and cast as a heroic figure. This has not been done at any point in time in cinema before. Never. Gay men in cinema were portrayed quite differently. And sometimes in, how shall we say this, comical or like caricature, in a caricature sense. I don't have a problem with the portrayal. I don't. I just want to be up front about that, right? Because my cousin was part of the Hep C vaccinations in San Francisco, and after he had his vaccination for Hep C, he was on his way to HIV/AIDSville, wherever they injected him with, took him out, right? And I saw him suffer and die, and and he tried to do with as much dignity as possible. And there are stories to be told about that. I'm not sure this is the story. Okay. I think a better story would have been that story, his story, or the story where the government and Robert Gallo and Fauci were essentially creating a test pool and then injecting them with an even deadlier drug called AZT. But let's put that aside for a second. So we have Denzel Washington, and this is a bit of a star turn for Denzel Washington as well. He's just coming onto the scene. And by the way, astrologically, they're opposites. Tom Hanks, Cancer, Denzel Washington, Capricorn, which is, kind of creates an interesting dynamic. Denzel Washington apparently is homophobic, and he's black. So now we have a larger kind of narrative going on here. There are a number of different themes that are being carried out in this movie. One is to have this character go through a transformation, to go from fear and prejudice in his own mind or his own experience to being able to stand up and do the right thing for somebody that prior to this case he would have vilified and had scorn for. And all the while we're watching Tom Hanks deteriorate and become more and more heroic. Okay. This is the film that really sells him as a serious actor. He wins the Oscar for it, right? Totally wins the Oscar. And what it does is it codifies the HIV AIDS theme. It's what it does. It codifies it. It sells it. It wraps it up and puts a bow around it. This is the cinematic, in a lot of ways, the cinematic marketing of that quote unquote pandemic or that quote unquote disease, whatever it was, right? Whatever it was. And I think it's connected to Lyme. I think a lot of what we experience is connected to Lyme disease. It's a different discussion. But this is what Philadelphia is supposed to do. Now, why Philadelphia? Why didn't they call it New York? Why did they call it Chicago? Why not Detroit? Philadelphia. This is where, of course, the whole thing starts, right? Freedom, liberty, Philadelphia. So there's a resonance with Philadelphia. Is an interesting place. There's some interesting movies that have Philadelphia attached to them. The Philadelphia Experiment, The Philadelphia Story. And here we have Philadelphia. And again, this is Hanks's moment, right, to cross over, have a major role. Kind of his career was kind of sinking. He wasn't making, his films were kind of tanking. The Burbs, Dragnet, I think Turner and Hooch is in there somewhere. But it resurrects his career, turns him into a serious actor, and then codifies sort of the heroic struggle of the gay community who is dealing with this plague that unfortunately has been foisted upon them. Okay. That's a turning point film for Hanks, is Philadelphia. After that, he's got to reclaim his heterosexuality. And the film that kind of sells it is Sleepless in Seattle. You'll see a lot of duality themes in any movie, but a lot of them in Hanks's movies as well. And I'll show you three poster images, right? So the idea with Sleepless in Seattle is that Tom Hanks lives in Seattle and he's a widower, and Meg Ryan, who will show up in another Hanks movie, You've Got Mail, they're pairing them together as kind of this sweetheart duo. And in Sleepless in Seattle, his kid wants him to get married again or have a girlfriend again. And he gets on this radio talk show. And this woman overhears the boy's story, and it's Meg Ryan. And she theoretically falls in love with him, right? So what we have here from a symbolic perspective is we have Tom Hanks, who is in the light and day and the solar principle and the masculine. And then we have Meg Ryan, who is in the dark, the moonlight, and the feminine principle. And on all three of these images I'm going to show you, it looks like Meg Ryan is in bondage, right? Look, it looks like she's in handcuffs. It looks like she's like chained, doesn't it? It's a really bizarre picture. Because she's just really standing on her New York balcony, but for all intents and purposes, she looks like she's, in chains here. She's a prisoner, right? And Tom Hanks seems to be sort of the arbiter of her fate in some ways. So I'm going to show you another image from that movie. But what's also interesting about that movie is that it gets into this idea of people, like, in some ways, social distancing, right? That is a social distance movie. I mean, literally, she's in New York, he's in Seattle. It's a total social distance movie. Bi-coastal. Here's another image. It's the same thing. It's a bit of a different angle, but here we have Hanks again. He's clearly in the light. He's the solar principle. She's clearly the luminous lunar principle. And again, it looks like she's in chains. It looks like she's waiting to be released from her lonely bondage as a New Yorker who will wind up eating Haagen-Dazs and drinking red wine and having a puppy as an excuse for her life, right? I mean, this is kind of how this thing sort of breaks down. And I'll show you another image. But this catapults Hanks as back into the role of a leading man. Like, he reclaims sort of his theoretical heterosexual connection here. And here's the third poster. So again, it's the same theme. Right, this is on the DVD. Again, solar, lunar. We have the full moon here. The damsel in distress. And now behind Hanks, we have the Space Needle, which is, of course, the appropriate phallic symbol behind him. So now we really have the masculine and the feminine, and the symbolism that's inherent in both of those. And of course, you guys know what happens, right? All right. So that triggers a number of movies about Seattle that get made in the 80s. There's a number of them. Singles was another one. But that's not a Tom Hanks movie. All right. So then they said, okay, we had such a smash hit with the two of them in Sleepless in Seattle. Let's roll it out again. Let's do another Nora Ephron script. And what do we have here? We have You've Got Mail. Now, the premise of this movie is that dear little old Meg Ryan has an independent bookstore, and Tom Hanks has a big book chain, and he wants to bury her, and they hate each other. But eventually, they love each other. But what's interesting about this movie is that it's selling email, right? This was when AOL was popping, and it was like, you've got mail, you've got mail, you've got mail. So again, Tom Hanks is kind of on the edge, right? And this is a series of films in the end of the 90s where I mean, I don't know how this guy sleeps. He makes so many films at the end of the 90s that it's just like, he's sleepless in Tom Hanks. Anyway, this is what's happening here. This is another trend, and they're actually selling again this idea that people can communicate right through email. You've got mail, you've got mail. And then they wind up actually becoming, lovers. But apparently the film was panned at the box office. And they may have been Sleepless in Seattle, but they were sleepwalking through You've Got Mail. That brings us to another Hanks film at the end of the 90s, which I think is probably one of the more important films, at least for him, in the time that he's in. And this is Saving Private Ryan, another Spielberg movie. And we've got Matt Damon and Ed Burns and Tom Sizemore, and then, of course, Tom Hanks. Now, why is this movie important? Well, the movie is important because it's happening. It's released in 1998. and it's referencing World War II. And it's about this heroic attempt to save Private Ryan, right? They're on a mission to save this guy. And what was happening in the late 90s? There were a couple of things that were happening in the late 90s. Number one, we were heavily involved in a war in Kosovo. Like, there was a lot going on in Kosovo, in Bosnia, Serbia. There was a lot of shit happening. And Clinton was essentially forced into committing U.S. troops to that war, even though they said that we weren't there. Clearly we were there, that it was some kind of UN effort or whatever. So there was a war going on. And it wasn't just that war. There was another war that was coming. And this film was a precursor ultimately for Gulf War II, because they had to begin to sell war as heroism. Then World War II almost always offers up kind of the last best narrative of quote unquote heroic efforts of the United States. Really, there's a whole different story of World War II, which I don't really want to get into right now. But this is what Saving Private Ryan is about. Why would they dredge up a World War II movie and a World War II narrative? The reason why is because they wanted to, number one, codify whatever we were doing at that time in the Balkans. That's number one. Number two, they wanted to make sure that moving forward, and within 3 short years after the release of this movie, we would be in Iran. I'm sorry, Iraq, my bad, in Iraq, right? And Afghanistan. So they needed to have some kind of patriotic, or they needed to have some kind of nationalistic spirit, so that when we would commit troops, this idea that war is actually a good and heroic thing would be floating around in our consciousness. And there are other movies around that time, but this one really stands out. Of course, it's a huge movie. It's a huge hit. Tom Hanks is front and center. And what is he doing? He's selling courage. He's selling kind of this moral mission and moral duty, right? There are young men, fresh-faced Matt Damon in the movie. It's pure propaganda. And when you look at the relationship between the military-industrial complex, the CIA, and Hollywood, you'll find that their fingers are everywhere. Everywhere. This movie does not get made unless they give them the seal of approval. And not only that, but they probably get a budget for it as well. Spielberg probably gets money from them in order to make this movie. And it's a big one. It's really big. And it gets people thinking about how great war is, how heroic war is. Yes, people lose lives, but guess what? There was a moral story. There's moral victories inside of this terrible, terrible, conflict and battle where millions and millions of lives were lost. So is this predictive programming? Perhaps not, but it certainly is codifying the American spirit or the national spirit and making the taste for war, a war that's yet to come, a war that we're currently in at that time, a bit more palatable. Okay. And Hanks plays a huge part in this. Huge part. Now remember, I'm not doing every film, but I'm showing you. All right, so let's go back. We have Bosom Buddies, The Initiation, and to some extent trans culture, but that's gone. But you could find that all the way through Hollywood. That wasn't a new phenomenon. They've been doing that for a long time, right? But he's being initiated in Bosom Buddies. Big, and I think big is code for something else. I think big is this movie that is talking about how to stay eternally youthful. Okay, remember, there's a big secret there. Then we go to the Philadelphia, which again, Hanks is selling the heroism of somebody who is gay, fighting for his rights, and then dying of AIDS. Right? That film is huge. It's big. He gets an Oscar for it, and it codifies AIDS and HIV as being a real thing. Right? the Fauci Gallo version of this whole deal. And then there's sub themes with Denzel Washington and the black and the white thing and the homophobic thing. That all gets worked out. And again, right? It for all intents and purposes, Philadelphia is really a film about diversity, overcoming prejudice, and new norms, and it sells it in a very big way. And again, I'm not criticizing. I'm just giving you kind of a contextualization for it. And Tom Hanks playing a key role in that, just like he plays a key role in Saving Private Ryan, just like he plays a key role in this whole idea with two people who are so socially fucking distant that they're living in two parts of the country, right? And then he plays another role in kind of selling this idea of, email or computerized communication. So he's interesting in that he is like a signifier for certain trends or certain movements or certain events that are either currently happening, about to happen, or they're the undercurrent that's running through our world in ways that we don't understand, nor can we see. And I'm going to reference Big again for that. All right. I'm going to go to a few more movies here. This one is really a trip. And then when I saw this, it's like, okay, there was something going on in a very big way with Tom Hanks. So Tom Hanks does a movie called Larry Crowne. All right. What is a crown? It's a Corona. Okay. So the premise of this story is that he loses his job and he goes to junior college and he hangs out with a bunch of young people and he finds himself. It tanked at the box office. It was not a great movie. But I'm going to show you something that's going to trip you out. It's really going to trip you out. Maybe some of you have seen this because you guys are hip. This is from Wikipedia, and it's a brief synopsis of the movie. Very brief. Subsisting on unemployment benefits. And unable to drive his SUV, Larry buys a scooter from Lamar. At the college, he becomes part of a colorful community of outcasts, also rans, and the overlooked, all trying to find a better future for themselves, by whom he is nicknamed Lance Corona. Okay? That's Tom Hanks's nickname in Larry Crowne. Lance Corona. Right there. What the hell? Right? And what does he have in Australia? Well, he's got the Corona typewriter, gives it to the kid. He's actually theoretically diagnosed with Corona, and he plays a guy named fucking Lance Corona. It's amazing. Two of the classes he takes are speech, taught by Mercedes Tennant. In economics, taught by Dr. Ed Matsutani. While he initially struggles in speech class, he does very well in economics. Lance Corona kills it in economics. Can you believe that? Lance Corona, Larry Crowne. Like, it was just a knockoff movie. They could have called him anything. Could have been, I don't know, Ben Button. It could have been, Carl Prince, or who knows? Could have been name. But no, it's got to be Larry Crowne. And he's got to have the nickname. What, Lance Corona? Isn't that interesting? It's just a knockoff film, but it's an interesting one, right? Gives you a little insight there. A little insight into the Hanks Code. He's an insider. All right. So the next series of movies, of course, with Hanks is the following. Of course, the Da Vinci Code, right? Robert Langdon, the Da Vinci Code. What is he doing? He's basically decoding all these mysteries that are associated with the Vatican and with the Last Supper. And here comes the Merovingian theme, right? The Merovingian theme is starting to come into play here. You know, that ultimately this woman would be a descendant of the Merovingian bloodline. Therefore, she would be the daughter of Jesus, correct? I mean, this is part of what's going on in the Da Vinci Code. And Hanks shows up here. And he's the guy that not only decodes the mystery, but he is one step away from the Merovingian bloodline. And not only that, but Dan Brown and the Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons it essentially initiates the public into decoding esoteric and occult mysteries. Dan Brown initiates us into the revelation of the method. And that's not by accident, right? Because a lot of the stuff that I do or Emily does or any number of people do, right, is that we decode theoretically these mysteries. Now, there is a school of thought that says, you know, we're being trained and entrained into participating into their symbolic understanding and language of the universe. That in some ways we are being perhaps subconsciously, or I wouldn't say unintentionally, but we are being indirectly initiated into their theoretical mystery school. I have different thoughts about that, but I could see where that could actually be part of the story. Okay. But I have a few different thoughts about that. But clearly, this is what these movies, the books, and then the movies we did. Again, they could have picked any actor. They could have had, I don't know, who would have been a good, how about I'm going to be Brad Pitt. How about James Spader? Now, James Spader would have been a good Robert Langdon. Why didn't they pick James Spader? Oh, why didn't they pick, I don't know. Why didn't they pick Denzel Washington? He would have been great. Who has to say that Robert Langdon has to be a white dude, right? That actually would have been kind of cool. I would have loved to see Denzel Washington play this guy. Seriously. They could have picked anybody. They could have picked Ed Harris. But no, it's Tom Hanks. Because Tom Hanks seems to be at the forefront of whatever trend or movement or something that they want to program or initiate us into, whether it's a war, whether it's email, right? Whether it's this story and theory of AIDS and the heroic struggle that goes along with it, right? Whatever it is, Tom Hanks seems to be the guy. He's the guy. He is the fuller brush salesman of introducing new ideas, new concepts, new paradigms, new ways of theoretically interpreting reality. And the Da Vinci Code is one of them. You know, I mean, there are people who were like breaking shit down before the Da Vinci Code, but once they started reading the Da Vinci Code, man, all of a sudden you had a whole planet of decoders. And there are 3 films that Hanks is a part of. The Da Vinci Code, obviously, and getting into this idea of the Merovingian bloodline. Let's look at Angels and Demons. Oh, this is another Da Vinci Code. This is an interesting cover. Because this actually shows like the symbols that are literally just peeling off of the Mona Lisa, right? And I believe this is the Spanish poster of it. And of course, there's all this script underneath the painting itself. Interesting, right? Sigils and signs and symbols. I thought I had Angels and Demons. Let me just see if I can pop that in there. Here, I've got two angels. So the Angels and Demons is the follow-up, I believe, of the Da Vinci Code, even though if I'm not mistaken, it actually is before the Da Vinci Code. And there he is again, Robert Langdon. And we have the duality, we have the demon, we have the angel, which we've seen before, obviously, with the Sleepless in Seattle stuff. And duality, it plays a theme, like go back to Big, and they're dancing on the piano, the ebony and the ivory and the keys. And then you have the duality of Philadelphia, right? You always find duality in a lot of these films, because where there's duality, there's tension, there's a field of tension. And inside the field of tension, there's a lot of things that can happen. So there we go. There's one version of Angels and Demons. And I think there was another film called Inferno, which I have not seen. I've seen the other two. And I have to say, when I found out that Tom Hanks was doing these movies, I was a little bummed. But now I understand why. Here's another screen share. And again, we're dealing with duality. You got the angel on the right, the devil on the left, sparks of creation flying around him. I don't think that this is by happenstance, right? I think Hanks, on some level, has been chosen. And my feeling is, again, that if you go back, and I haven't done any of this research, right? It's just a hunch. You go back into his lineage, you go back into his genealogy, he's got something. And there's even this like weird meme, right? That they were going to use his antibodies as like the basis for the cure for corona. Did you guys hear that or follow that? That's almost like the blood of Christ, right? And Tom Hanks playing this Christ-like figure in this new weird script. Just strange stuff. But why is that? I think, again, and I think the Da Vinci Code is a tell. I think it's a total tell. All right. I'm going to get into the final movie and try to break this down a little bit. And I think it's one of the more complex ones, and one of the ones that I think that we can really begin to see not just what's going on with Hanks, but sort of the nature of so-called reality. And it's Cloud Atlas. And Cloud Atlas is it's a fascinating film on a number of levels. It's Tom Tykwer, who did who did Run Lola Run, really good movie. And of course the Wachowskis, who did the Matrix films, amongst others. And it's based on a novel by a guy named David Mitchell. And if you haven't seen the movie, the premise is that there are these stories that are interwoven through time, and they're all connected through a number of different characters, starting with like a diary or a script that comes out of a ship where there are slaves on a ship, and there is gold on this ship. And it starts with a brutal captain of the ship, who's played by Tom Hanks, by the way, who is trying to drug this young, idealistic son of somebody who comes from power and wealth, and who helped finance this trip. And the son has kind of this moment of conscience, and he says, look, I'm not into this slave thing, man. When you get back, I'm going to turn your ass in. So Tom Hanks, his character, begins to poison him. And then one of the slaves, who I believe is played by this guy, David Gayassi, if I'm not mistaken, he saves him, right? He saves him. And then the character goes back to England, and his wife happens to be Asian, right? And he decides that he's not going to follow in the family business of slave trading. He becomes an abolitionist. His father disowns him, but these diaries become a theme that kind of permeates throughout the entire story. And there's this idea here that all these characters are interconnected through time and perhaps even through incarnation. So it's a very complex movie, or it's a very complex novel to try to capture as a movie. And what they did is they had Tom Hanks and Halle Berry and Hugo Weaving and Jim Broadbent play a number of different characters, right? So they show up in the same movie playing different people connected through the same story. But the theme that runs through Cloud Atlas isn't one of not just because this journal is the vehicle that the movie runs through, but the film itself is about the reconciliation of opposites. And again, we're almost always dealing with duality in the movie, right? There's always issues of black and white, or black versus white, oppression versus freedom. These are all themes that somehow have to get resolved by the end of the movie. And it's not just, theoretically racial issues, but also identity issues. This character here plays, she plays a cyborg in a robot, and she winds up writing what, for all intents and purposes, is this thesis that becomes sort of like, the keys of Enoch for a future generation, right? And this guy right here is in love with her. And now we have this whole kind of other sort of, this fusion between human and non-human. So the actual movie itself is one kind of giant vat of alchemy, okay? Cloud Atlas is an exercise in alchemy. Now, whether you buy it or not, or whether you buy into sort of the symbols or the base materials they're using to alchemize Cloud Atlas, is a whole other kind of discussion in a lot of ways, okay? But that's what's going on here. And Tom Hanks plays multiple characters in the movie right now. But what's really interesting, and I'm gonna give you a spoiler here. So I have to give the spoiler because I can't talk about this with Tom Hanks without the spoiler. So I'm going to stop talking now for about 10 seconds, and you can stop this. You go watch the movie and come back if you haven't seen the movie. Okay, that's enough. All right, so I'm going to show you a few other pictures from the film. These are stills, not the poster, but stills. And this takes place literally, from like the 1700s all the way up into the year 2300. So there's a lot of time and a lot of space and a lot of duality. So again, I want to show you two characters that Hanks plays in the movie. Like, this is Tom Hanks right here. Okay. What do we have? We got an eye horror sighting. Same thing here, right? So again, this is a Hanksian theme. Where did we first see this? We saw this in the big poster, and it's continuing all the way through Cloud Atlas. And I haven't even dove into the other 20 movies he's done, but I just thought this was interesting, and at least it shows a consistent theme. Okay. Oh, speaking of consistent themes, here we go again. All right, so this is interesting because Halle Berry plays a character called Merovin. Merovyn, Merovin, which sounds a lot like Merovingian, right? There's an interesting correlation between Merovin and Merovingian. And of course, what does Tom Hanks have here? Another little Eye of Horus action, 3 times in one movie. Okay, so here's the spoiler alert. This is where it gets interesting. At the end of Cloud Atlas, in the year 2300, Tom Hanks is living in Hawaii, and people are dying of radiation poisoning. Now, these people, Halle Berry's people, they live off planet. And Tom Hanks, well, Halle Berry's on the island, but Tom Hanks knows where a tower is on the island to signal the Starcraft that will bring Halle Berry's people down and pick them up, like Noah's Ark, right? Okay. So there's a brutal, absolutely brutal fight between Tom Hanks, Hugo Weaving, Halle Berry's in the mix. It's a brutal fight, brutal scene, but they survive. Tom Hanks barely survives. And they wind up leaving Earth and going off planet. I told you now, you had a chance because of the spoiler alert. So what happens when they go off planet? So this is the world that they're living on. And Tom Hanks's character, Mr. Eye of Horus, is pointing to a light in the sky that's Earth. Okay. Now what happens is that Tom Hanks and Halle Berry become the new Adam and Eve for this world that they're living on. And what do? They create and produce the golden race. And this is where Cloud Atlas goes. This is theoretically the resolution, the duality, and the alchemy at the end of the movie. It's the creation of a new race. And it's not even on this planet. It's on, wherever they're living. What's interesting back here is this looks very much like a Zen sand garden, doesn't it? But this is where I think Hanks is getting into this idea of the reset, right? Because that's what happens at the end of Cloud Atlas. There's a reset. And then these kids, right? In Cloud Atlas, they are the chosen ones. They are the chosen ones. They are the golden race. They are the golden species. And they have no inherent duality within them. It's all been resolved, right? It's all been resolved. And they get to start fresh on a new world where where there's no history. There's a reset on another planet. So there's some cinematic precedence with Hanks and Cloud Atlas. It's an interesting movie. I'm not sure. If it was on, I'd watch it again, but I'm not sure I completely sign off on it. That's just me. But there are some good performances. I'm always interested in watching Keith David act, and Hugo Weaving is always dangerous. But you can see here, and this is just, and I'll do some more Hanks maybe later. But because there's some other movies, like I did not even get into a hologram for the Prince. Like that movie happened about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And that's where Tom Hanks goes to, like, what is it? It's either Dubai or I don't know. He goes to someplace in the Middle East to sell the Prince, or Saudi Arabia, to sell them a holographic technology. And what does he do? He falls in love with a Muslim woman, right? So now we have Hanks basically crossing this bridge. There's other films too, right? There's Charlie Wilson's War. Charlie Wilson's War is about this guy, Charlie Wilson, who was a senator. He basically does these deals with the Taliban during the Afghan war, the war between the Russians and the Afghanis. He helped set up the Taliban. Like, so that movie comes out, and as we're dicking around with the Taliban, we're dicking around with Al Qaeda. And what do we have? We have a feel-good story about going back into history and having this nice little buddy, brother, big brother, little brother relationship with the Afghanis and arming them to the teeth so they could go kick the Russians' ass. And that's happening around the same time that Al Qaeda and Daesh and all these other characters are getting stirred up again. Do you see these movies that Tom Hanks is involved in? Like, he is this major player that greases the cultural wheels for people to buy into certain programs. And a lot of it has to do because he's got some kind of credibility. He's and he's talented. The guy's a good actor. He's an actor. And he's been put into these roles. I also think there's something going on with the Hanks bloodline. And, if I have some more time, once I settle down from moving and everything, maybe I'll get into that a little bit. But I think there's a there. And that's why he's been plucked out in a lot of ways. Larry Crowne, Lance Corona, right? Significant stuff. All right, let me check in with you guys. Let's see where you are in Chatlandia. Let's go back. Get out of here. Get out of here. Let's see. We're planet formerly known as Earth. Let's see what we have here. Let's see. I read the book, but the movie was better. Oh, there you go, Trish. Spoil it. That's so funny. I bought the book, couldn't read. Yeah, it's heavy reading, right? I mean, it's heavy duty reading. Definitely heavy duty reading. What else we have here? Yeah, I didn't get into Castaway yet. There's a lot of weirdness with Wilson, huh? A lot of weirdness with Wilson. What else do we have? Last name Langdon, interesting name. One of the oldest recorded. Means Long Hill. Hanks is creepy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, so Zero Drank says the guy on the right made the professional total pedo movie starring Natalie Portman. Yeah, Jean Reno is who you're talking about. Dan Brown is probably the worst writer in history. I would have rejected his childishly written books as a publisher and lost millions. Your taste is too good for the programmers of the world. Thank God, Steve. Thank God. Hey, it's the purple one. What's happening, purple one? What's going on? Let's see. What else do we have here? What else? Anything else? What else we got going? You mean Rita's head? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Rita's head. That's right. Wilson. Yep. Someone brought up Polar Express earlier. I think that's a big one. Yeah, I'll jump into Polar Express and a few of these other films that I don't have enough time today but I just took the ones that I thought would be sort of, how do I say this, relevant to the subject matter of finding something that feels like he's involved, he's selling it, and he's kind of, doing the push for particularly programming a new phase in this kind of, evolution of the simulation. That's what I think Hanks's role has been. And he's doing it again. He's doing it again. Whether he's here or not, who knows? But that weird, creepy, commencement speech for the kids at Wright State, that's pure reset, pure inheritor material. He's again playing another role, right? He's playing another role. Next time I do this, I'll get into Mr. Rogers and some of the other stuff. And his last movie, he was going to play Colonel Tom Parker. I don't know if they finished that movie, but it's an Elvis movie. And what's really interesting about Colonel Tom Parker is that wasn't his name. He's like, I think he's from like someplace like Czechoslovakia or something like that. And he actually like killed a guy. He killed the guy when he was in Europe, and he snuck on a ship to get to the United States. And he jumped the ship. He never went through customs, didn't have a passport, and came up with this Colonel Tom Parker persona, and eventually winds up managing Elvis. He could never leave the country because he knew that he wouldn't be able to get back in. Isn't that interesting? That's the guy that Tom Hanks was playing, was Colonel Tom Parker. And what did he do? He left the country. And do we really know if he's back or not? The mystery deepens. Okay, I think we're Colonel Tom Parker is Kaiser Sose. Oh, I like that. Got to call it my appointment. Catch it. Yeah, I'm out of here. Thanks, Ani, for showing up. Parker was Dutch. Thank you, Michael. He's Dutch. Thank you. I thought he was Czech. He is Dutch. Thank you for that. But that's not even his name. He's not even a colonel. Men from Mars, men from Venus, handler for the Phillips family. You mean Captain Phillips? A Tom Hanks movie? Is that right? Interesting. Okay. I'm out here for today. Thanks for showing up. I'm glad we could have this time together. So I'll be back on Sunday night. Hopefully the studio will be completely up and running. I got some great astrological stuff ready to go for Sunday night. We're going to be looking at Venus retrograde, Mars and Pisces, which I touched into just a little bit last week. I also have a very interesting chart that I'm going to break down on Sunday night, and I'm really looking forward to it. And maybe I'll be kind of forecasting a bit for the summer. We got an eclipse coming up. I'm going to be looking at the eclipse on Sunday night. Please join me Sunday night, Astro Live. I guess it's all happening on this channel now since YouTube won't allow me to stream my other channel anymore. So meet me here on Sunday night. That's going to be 7:45 Central Daylight Time here in the New Digs. And I really appreciate you hanging out with me here today, having the patience to kind of hang out while I got the technical side of things together. Have a wonderful weekend. Have a blessed weekend. It's a Memorial Day weekend. Go out, celebrate life, put your feet in the ground, celebrate the fact that you're here amongst all the high strange. Take in the air, open your chest, open your lungs, open your mind, open your heart. I'll be back on Sunday night. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to say open what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Thanks for joining me today.